The soft sound of a piano filled the air of the small bistro in the West Village, New York, mingling with the discreet clinking of silverware against French porcelain. For William Thompson, that was the sound of peace. Amidst a chaotic schedule of endless meetings, decisions that moved millions of dollars, and the constant pressure of keeping his tech empire at the top of the American market, his daily lunch at that elegant French restaurant was a true sanctuary. It was his piece of tranquility in a loud, relentless world. The food was impeccable, the atmosphere serene and welcoming, but the real reason for his unwavering loyalty to the place had a name that sounded like music to his ears every day: Lucy. By the way, if you enjoy emotional stories like this, please subscribe to our channel. Also, comment where you're watching this video from. She moved through the dining room with a natural grace that seemed choreographed, as if every step were part of a silent, elegant dance. She wasn't just a waitress mechanically doing her job. She was the true soul of that special place. Her dark brown hair was always pinned up in a simple but elegant bun, and her honey-colored eyes radiated a genuine kindness that was becoming increasingly rare to find. She never needed a notepad to take William's order. She knew every detail of his preferences as if they were engraved in her memory. "The usual, Mr. Thompson," she would ask with a warm smile that seemed to light up even the darkest corner of the room, bringing life to the refined environment. "You know it." "Lucy, it's the best part of my day," he would reply sincerely, immediately feeling the accumulated tension in his shoulders begin to dissipate like mist in the morning sun. It was always a filet mignon with Dijon mustard sauce, rare just as he liked it, accompanied by potatoes au gratin that were crispy on the outside and soft on the inside, and always a generous glass of the house red, a Napa Cabernet he had discovered there, and which had become his absolute favorite. The conversation between them was brief and professional, but charged with a comfortable familiarity that transcended the simple customer-server relationship. She would genuinely ask about his day, showing real interest in his answers, and he about hers, wanting to know if everything was okay, if the culinary school she attended at night was going as planned. They were precious little islands of normalcy and humanity in his extraordinary and often lonely life at the top. Lucy didn't see him as the William Thompson from the covers of business magazines, the young prodigy who had built a billion-dollar tech empire before 35. To her, he was simply Will, the kind customer from Table 7, who appreciated his steak prepared in a very specific way and who always had a kind word to share. And he, in turn, saw in her a truly real and authentic person, someone whose smile was not for sale at any price, and whose kindness was a genuine gift, not a calculated or self-serving formality. However, this delicious, restorative piece was brutally interrupted once a month, like a clock marking an unwanted appointment. The tradition was immutable and unquestionable, the obligatory monthly dinner with his fiancée Caroline and her parents, Jean-Pierre Dubois and Catherine Beaumont. The setting was exactly the same elegant bistro he loved so much during the day, but the atmosphere transformed completely when they arrived. The air, once light and welcoming as a hug, became dense and heavy, laden with suffocating formalities and unsaid expectations that hung over the table like a dark cloud. The first thing William invariably noticed was Lucy's painful absence. On these specific dinners, she was never present. The service was always handled by another waiter, an older gentleman named Arthur, efficient and polite but completely devoid of the human warmth and genuine connection that Lucy naturally brought. William even asked about her once, driven by curiosity and perhaps an unconscious desire to see that familiar face. "It's her night off." "Sir?" Arthur replied curtly and directly, ending the subject before it could even develop. It seemed like a rather unlikely coincidence that she always had the night off on the exact same night of the month. But William, lost in his anxiety to please his future family and to fit into that sophisticated world, simply let it pass without questioning further. Caroline Dubois was the perfect personification of European elegance and refinement transplanted to New York. Beautiful in an almost unreal way, cultured, fluent in 4 languages with a dazzling smile that could disarm entire armies and conquer any heart. William loved her deeply, or at least he intensely loved the romanticized idea of her he had built in his mind over their 2-year relationship. He loved the precise way she seemed to perfectly complete his successful life, the unmistakable touch of international sophistication and culture she brought to his world, which was previously dominated only by numbers, code, and business. She was everything he thought he needed to finally feel complete and accepted in circles that were once barred to him. Her parents, Jean-Pierre Dubois and Catherine Beaumont, were direct descendants of an old and aristocratic French lineage, and they made it an absolute point for everyone around them to know this at every possible opportunity. Jean-Pierre was a tall, imposing man with impeccably straight posture and a penetrating gaze that seemed to constantly assess the exact price of everything and everyone around him, as if each person were a commodity to be priced. Catherine was the perfect image of the traditional European matriarch, always adorned with her authentic pearl necklaces and displaying a calculated air of subtle superiority that she mastered like a fine art. Both had moved to the United States decades ago but maintained their French roots as a badge of honor and superiority. And then, inevitably, the real performance would begin, replayed each month like a rehearsed play. "Ah," Jean-Pierre would say to Caroline just after the appetizers arrived, his voice heavy with that exaggerated French accent he carefully cultivated. "I just remembered that fascinating story about our cousin André in Avignon. C'est incroyable, ma chérie." And just like that, like an iron curtain being abruptly lowered, the foreign language would descend heavily upon the table, creating an invisible but impassable barrier. The conversation would then flow quickly in a melodic, fast-paced French, leaving William completely isolated and lost, like a foreigner at his own table. He didn't understand a single word of that language that sounded so beautiful, but had become a symbol of his exclusion. All he could do was smile forcedly, nod mechanically when it seemed appropriate, and desperately try to decipher their body language for clues about what they were discussing with such animation. He clearly saw the knowing, meaningful glances constantly exchanged among the three family members. He saw Catherine's restrained, enigmatic smiles that seemed to hide secrets, Jean-Pierre's expansive, theatrical gestures as he told his endless stories, and Caroline's delicate, crystalline laughter that echoed like music in his ears, but which now carried a tone of exclusion. They weren't just making family small talk, as Caroline always insisted. They were connecting on a deep, intimate level that he could never reach or fully understand, and frankly, they seemed to make a deliberate point of highlighting and emphasizing this at every meeting, as if they wanted to constantly remind him that he was an outsider in that closed aristocratic circle. It was a subtle but extremely effective way of keeping him in his place, of reminding him that despite all his wealth and business success, he was still just the son of a simple merchant from the Midwest, someone who had made money but would never have the true refinement and culture that came with centuries of European lineage. Occasionally, Caroline would turn gracefully to him in the middle of the French conversation, placing her perfectly manicured hand on his in a gesture that was supposed to be comforting. "Don't worry, my love. It's just boring family trivialities that wouldn't interest you. Dad is just telling an old story about a vineyard that belonged to my great-grandfather," she would say in her soft, velvety voice, sounding like a carefully rehearsed and oft-repeated consolation. But William was absolutely not a fool, despite what they clearly thought of him. He had built a multi-billion-dollar technology empire completely from scratch, starting in a small rented room with just a used computer, basing his entire extraordinary success on his sharp, almost instinctive ability to read people with surgical precision, to understand hidden motivations, and to decipher complex situations behind carefully constructed facades. This skill had made him one of the most successful entrepreneurs of his generation in America, capable of predicting market movements and identifying opportunities that others couldn't see. He saw perfectly the glaring difference between a simple, casual conversation about ancestral vineyards and the particular, malicious glint that appeared in Jean-Pierre's eyes when he deliberately looked in his direction and said something in French that invariably made Catherine let out a muffled laugh behind her gloved hand, as if they were sharing a private joke at his expense. He felt exactly like a peculiar item on display in a curiosity museum, an interesting but inferior attraction that they discussed openly and without any embarrassment, completely protected and secure behind the impenetrable barrier of the foreign language. The feeling was profoundly humiliating and painful, a tightening knot of growing helplessness forming inexorably in his stomach with each passing dinner. "Why don't you speak in English so I can join the conversation?" William finally asked Caroline one night in the luxury car, returning home after another of those torturous dinners. His voice carried a contained frustration that he could no longer completely disguise. "I feel like a complete stranger at the table, as if I'm not part of the family I'm about to officially join." Caroline let out a long, heavy sigh, a tired theatrical sound as if his sincere question were an unfair burden she was forced to bear. "Will, darling, you're being overly sensitive about this again." It's their native language, the tongue they learned from the cradle. "You have to understand that sometimes the words just flow naturally in French. It's more comfortable and natural for them to express themselves that way. It's absolutely nothing about you, my love. It's just old boring family matters. Old stories that really wouldn't interest you in any way. You're not missing anything important, believe me." He desperately wanted to believe her, wanted with all his strength to accept that simple, reassuring explanation. He looked at her face, so perfectly beautiful and serene under the city lights flashing by the car window, and forced himself to swallow his growing doubts, pushing them to the back of his conscience. He loved her deeply. He was completely in love. He was just 3 months away from marrying her, in a ceremony that would be the social event of the season in New York. This was the family he was consciously choosing, the family that would be his for the rest of his life. And if the necessary price to pay for this seemingly perfect life, for this definitive entry into a world of sophistication and culture he had always admired from afar, was to feel like a complete excluded idiot once a month, maybe it was really worth enduring the discomfort. At least that's what he told himself repeatedly, trying to convince himself, while the echo of laughter in French still resonated persistently in his ears like a constant, painful reminder that at that specific table, in that closed exclusive circle, he was and perhaps always would be an eternal outsider, someone tolerated out of necessity, but never truly accepted as an equal. The months dragged on heavily, each monthly dinner becoming progressively harder to bear than the last. William began to get a growing, disturbing feeling in the pit of his stomach every time the date approached on the calendar, a kind of anticipatory dread that left him restless in the days leading up to it. He knew exactly what was coming. The incomprehensible conversations that completely excluded him, the glances he couldn't decipher, but which seemed loaded with hidden meaning, the suffocating feeling of being judged and found inadequate according to standards he didn't even fully understand. And worst of all was seeing Caroline, the woman he loved with all his heart, and with whom he planned to spend the rest of his life, actively participating in that exclusionary dynamic without showing the slightest discomfort or embarrassment, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to leave him completely out. But life followed its relentless course. Business continued to demand all his attention during the day, and William found his necessary refuge in the daily lunches at the small West Village bistro. There, in Lucy's silent but comforting company, he could breathe freely again. He could be simply himself without masks or pretensions. She never asked about his personal life invasively, never pressed for intimate details, but there was something in her attentive, sensitive eyes, in her genuine warm smile, that made him feel understood and accepted exactly as he was, without needing to constantly prove his worth or sophistication. One day, as she carefully placed his favorite dish on the table, with that delicate precision that characterized all her movements, William noticed a different expression on her face, something he couldn't quite identify, but which seemed like a strange mixture of concern and hesitation. "Is everything all right, Lucy?" he asked with genuine concern, putting down the fork he was already lifting to his mouth. "Yes, Mr. Thompson," she replied quickly, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes as it usually did. It was a polite but distant smile, different from the warm, welcoming one he knew so well. "Just a long, tiring day at school. I have a tough exam on advanced pastry techniques coming up, and I'm a bit stressed about preparing." He didn't insist at that specific moment, respecting her space and privacy, but he stored that worried expression in his memory, that look that seemed to want to say something important, but held back for some unknown reason. There was something different in the air between them, a subtle tension that hadn't existed before, as if she were carrying an invisible weight she didn't know how or if she should share. The date of the next monthly dinner was fast approaching on the calendar, like a dark cloud on the horizon, and William felt the familiar growing tightness in his chest. It was the third Thursday of October, a date he had marked with a small red X in his digital calendar, as if marking an unpleasant but necessary dental appointment. As he meticulously adjusted the knot of his Italian silk tie in the mirror of his luxury apartment's foyer, he watched Caroline behind him in the reflection, finishing fastening a delicate diamond earring he had given her for her last birthday, an expensive piece from an exclusive jeweler. She was absolutely stunning in a navy blue silk dress that perfectly enhanced the intense color of her light eyes and contrasted beautifully with her fair skin. "Ready, my love?" she asked in her velvet soft voice, turning to face him with that rehearsed smile he knew so well, and which lately had begun to seem a little too artificial. "Always ready for you," he replied automatically, forcing the wide smile she expected to see, the smile of the infatuated and satisfied fiancé he was supposed to be. The drive to the bistro was filled with safe, superficial conversation about his work, about a new investment he was considering, about the final choice of flowers for the rapidly approaching wedding. Caroline spoke excitedly about the floral arrangements, about whether they should use white or champagne roses, lilies or imported peonies. William listened politely, making appropriate comments at the right moments. But his mind was somewhere else entirely, already anticipating with growing anxiety the discomfort that awaited him in the next 2 or 3 hours. When they arrived at the elegant restaurant, Jean-Pierre and Catherine were already seated comfortably at the usual table, that large, ostentatious table near the window that offered a privileged view of the tree-lined street. Jean-Pierre wore an impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than many people's monthly salary, and Catherine was adorned with her characteristic jewelry, and a designer dress she had made a point of mentioning was exclusive. They greeted William with formal kisses on the cheek, that European type of greeting that always left him slightly uncomfortable, not knowing exactly how many kisses to give or which way to turn his face first. "William, mon cher, how is business?" Jean-Pierre asked in English, but with that heavy accent he had never lost even after decades living in the US, as if making the effort to speak English perfectly was beneath someone of his standing. His handshake was too firm, almost aggressive, as if he were constantly trying to prove something about his virility or power. "Very well, Jean-Pierre. We just closed a major partnership with a European software company that will significantly expand our international presence," William replied politely, taking his seat at the table with a practiced motion. He immediately noticed, as he always did, that Lucy was not in the dining room that night. In her place, the waiter Arthur promptly appeared with the menus and the wine list, maintaining that professional, neutral expression that never revealed anything beyond mechanical efficiency. The orders were placed with the usual pomp, Jean-Pierre making a point of demonstrating his profound knowledge of French wines as he chose a very expensive bottle of Bordeaux that William would pay for without flinching at the end of the night. As soon as the appetizers arrived delicately at the table, the expected and dreaded ritual began. Catherine leaned towards Caroline, lightly touching her arm with that exclusive familiarity, and began speaking rapidly in French, her voice taking on an animation she rarely showed when speaking English, as if her native tongue liberated something repressed within her. Caroline replied in the same language, and soon Jean-Pierre joined the lively conversation, creating that impenetrable circle of incomprehensible words that left William completely isolated once again. He looked from one to the other, trying to appear interested and engaged, smiling vaguely when it seemed appropriate, nodding at moments he imagined were natural pauses in the conversation. But inside, that familiar knot of frustration and humiliation grew progressively in his stomach, tightening more and more with each minute that passed in that deliberate exclusion. That specific night, however, something different happened that put his sharp business instincts on high alert. Jean-Pierre looked directly at him while saying something particularly long in French, and both Catherine and Caroline laughed loudly, a laugh that echoed through the elegant restaurant. It wasn't a polite or restrained laugh, but a genuine, uncontrolled guffaw, the kind that makes your eyes water and requires you to hold your stomach. And worst of all, was that all? 3 of them looked at William immediately afterward, with smiles that seemed loaded with a hidden meaning he couldn't decipher, but which was certainly not positive. William felt his face heat up intensely, his cheeks turning red not just from embarrassment, but also from a rising anger he rarely allowed to surface. They were talking about him. That was absolutely clear and undeniable now. It wasn't stories about ancestral vineyards or distant cousins in picturesque French villages. It was jokes about him, comments that ridiculed him, cruel observations protected by the barrier of the language he didn't master. "What's so funny?" he asked directly, his voice coming out harder and sharper than he intended, abruptly breaking the cheerful mood at the table. Caroline blinked several times, as if she had momentarily forgotten he was sitting there with them, and quickly recomposed that sweet, reassuring smile she always used when she needed to calm him down. "Oh, my love, Dad was just telling a hilarious story about a funny incident that happened when he was young in Paris. A silly misunderstanding at a metro station that almost made him miss an important train. Nothing serious, really. You wouldn't find it that funny. It's one of those things that only makes sense when you know the full cultural context." But William was not convinced at all. He clearly saw the quick exchange of glances among the three family members, that silent communication that very close people develop over the years, that nonverbal code that conveyed complete messages without the need for words. There was something deeply wrong with this whole situation, something that went far beyond simple family conversations in a native language. His business instinct, the same one that alerted him when something wasn't right in complex negotiations or when someone was trying to deceive him in million-dollar contracts, was screaming louder and louder inside him, demanding attention. The rest of the dinner passed in an uncomfortable, tense blur. William barely touched his excellent food that in other circumstances he would have deeply enjoyed. His stomach was too twisted, too tight with that toxic mixture of contained anger, growing humiliation and a disturbing suspicion he could no longer completely ignore. He watched Caroline with renewed attention, looking for signs he might have missed before by being blinded by passion. The way she touched her mother's arm with such intimacy as they laughed together at those French jokes. The way her eyes shone when Jean-Pierre made a particularly animated comment. The natural ease with which she switched between the two languages, as if they were two completely separate worlds. And he belonged only to one of them, the inferior, less interesting world. When they finally left the restaurant after those 3 endless hours that seemed to last an eternity, William was emotionally exhausted, drained of all energy. Caroline said goodbye to her parents with warm, lingering kisses, exchanging a few more quick words in French that he couldn't quite catch but which sounded like secret arrangements or final comments on the evening. In the car during the ride back, she tried to take his hand as she always did. That gesture of intimacy and connection that was supposed to comfort him, but William gently pulled it away, claiming he needed to hold the steering wheel more firmly because of the heavy New York night traffic. "Are you okay, love?" she asked with apparent genuine concern, turning to look at him with those large, expressive eyes that always managed to disarm him. "You're too quiet tonight. Did something happen at dinner that bothered you? We can talk about anything, you know that." "I'm just tired, Caroline. It was a very intense week at work. Lots of important decisions and stressful meetings," he lied easily, keeping his eyes fixed on the road ahead, on the red and yellow lights blurring in the dense traffic. But inside his mind was working frantically, analyzing every detail of that night, every shared glance, every shared laugh, every word in French that had so completely excluded him from his own future family. The next day, William arrived at the bistro for his usual lunch with an even heavier weight on his chest than usual. The previous night had left deep marks, and he hadn't been able to sleep properly, spending hours staring at the ceiling of the bedroom while Caroline slept peacefully beside him, completely oblivious to the storm of thoughts and doubts consuming his restless mind. When he entered the familiar, welcoming atmosphere of the restaurant, he saw Lucy immediately, and something in her face confirmed that she too had had a difficult night. There were discreet dark circles under her normally bright eyes, and her expression carried a weight he instantly recognized as deep concern. She led him to his usual table, that table 7 that was practically reserved for him every day. But this time she didn't ask the usual question about his order. Instead, she hesitated visibly beside the table, her hands nervously clutching the small notepad she carried, even though she knew she would never need to use it for his order. "Mr. Thompson," she began in a low, urgent voice, almost a whisper only he could hear. I really need to talk to you about something extremely important. Something I've been observing for months and that I can't keep silent about anymore, even at the risk of losing my job over it." William felt his heart suddenly speed up, a jolt of adrenaline coursing through his entire body. "What is it, Lucy?" he asked, indicating the empty chair in front of him in a clear invitation for her to sit. "Please sit down. If it's important, then we need to talk properly." She glanced quickly around the dining room, checking if any of the other staff or the manager were watching, and then quickly sat on the edge of the chair, as if ready to jump up and run at any moment if necessary. "I don't know exactly how to start this, and maybe I'm completely wrong and making a huge mistake by meddling in a customer's personal life," she said quickly, her words tumbling out with evident anxiety. "But I couldn't live with myself anymore if I said nothing, and later found out I could have helped prevent something terrible. Mr. Thompson, those monthly dinners you have here with your fiancée and her parents, I've been watching them for a long time, even though I'm not the one who serves you on those nights." William felt a chill run down his spine, every hair on his body standing on end instantly. "Go on, please," he said in a hoarse voice, suddenly absolutely certain that he was about to hear something that would change everything, something that would confirm all those vague, disturbing suspicions that had been growing inside him like a venomous plant. Lucy took a deep breath, clearly gathering all her courage to continue with this conversation that could cost her her job and her professional reputation, built with so much effort over the years. "I speak fluent French, Mr. Thompson," she revealed, and those words fell on him like a bucket of ice water in the middle of a scorching summer, making every nerve in his body instantly go on high alert. "My mother is French, originally from Marseille, and I grew up bilingual in our modest but loving home, switching naturally between English and French since my early childhood. She taught me the language with all her care and attention to detail, insisting I maintain contact with her cultural roots, even being so far from France. I understand absolutely every word they say at those monthly dinners, and what I hear month after month, sir, leaves me deeply disturbed and outraged in a way I can no longer ignore in good conscience. They are not just making family small talk or telling old stories about distant relatives as your fiancé always claims with such conviction. They are talking about you directly, discussing your personal traits, your habits, your personality, and not in an affectionate, respectful, or even neutral way as one would expect from a family that genuinely cares about someone." William's world seemed to tilt dangerously beneath his feet, as if the solid floor of the restaurant had turned to quicksand. He gripped the edge of the table instinctively, his knuckles turning white from the force of his grip. "What exactly do they say?" His voice came out tense, controlled with great effort, but he could feel the anger beginning to boil in his veins like lava, about to erupt from a volcano. Lucy looked away momentarily, clearly uncomfortable being the bearer of such devastating news, but then met his eyes again with renewed determination. "They call you various disrespectful and cruel things in French, sir. Terms I wouldn't want to translate literally, but which basically mean they consider you ignorant, uncultured, without true class. Jean-Pierre frequently makes jokes about your humble origins, about how you're just nouveau riche without real refinement, someone who has money but no aristocratic breeding or lineage. He imitates your American accent, your expressions, the way you hold your silverware. Catherine laughs and makes comments about how common your family is, how your parents were just simple merchants without any social distinction." Each word was like a precise stab to William's chest, piercing his defenses and hitting his exposed heart directly. "And Caroline?" he asked, though he already instinctively knew the answer, could already feel the bitter truth forming like bile in his throat. "Does she participate in these conversations? Does she laugh at the jokes about me too?" Lucy nodded slowly, genuine sadness filling her expressive eyes as she confirmed the worst. "Yes, Mr. Thompson. She not only participates, but she often initiates these malicious comments. She talks about how you're so naive and trusting, so easy to manipulate because you're desperate for their acceptance. She frequently mentions your money, how much you have, the investments you make, the properties you own. They discuss strategies, detailed plans. Mr. Thompson, with all due respect, and considering I may be overstepping boundaries into matters that aren't my concern, but I need to say this clearly. They are planning something involving your assets and your fortune. There are specific conversations about access to accounts, about documents Caroline needs you to sign after the wedding, about power of attorney and transfers of assets. William felt all the blood drain completely from his face, leaving him pale as paper. Two absolute, inescapable truths crystallized simultaneously and painfully in his mind at that terrible moment. First, the love of his life did not love him at all, had never truly loved him, and this entire elaborate charade of a perfect relationship was just a carefully constructed and meticulously executed trap. Second, his own desperate naivety and his pathetic need to be accepted by that supposedly elite family had almost cost him everything he had built with so much sacrifice, sweat, and years of hard work. "They're using me," he said, not as a question seeking confirmation, but as a cold, hard statement of incontestable fact. All this time, this entire carefully planned 2-year relationship was just an elaborate setup to steal my money. "I am deeply sorry to be the one to tell you this, Mr. Thompson," Lucy said softly, extending her hand across the table in a genuine gesture of comfort and solidarity. "I debated with myself for months whether I should interfere or not, whether it was my place to say anything. But I couldn't watch in silence any longer as people who clearly don't respect or value you continued to deceive you so blatantly. You deserve so much more than this. You deserve to be truly loved for who you really are, not for the size of your bank account or the properties you own." William looked at this young waitress sitting across from him, this simple, honest person who worked hard to pay for her culinary school and who had just risked her livelihood to save him from a monumental financial and emotional disaster. And then he mentally pictured Caroline, that stunning, sophisticated woman he thought he knew so well, whom he imagined he loved deeply, but who in reality was a complete, calculating stranger, wearing a perfect mask of affection and devotion. The difference between the two women could not be more stark and devastating. "Thank you, Lucy," he finally managed to say, his voice choked with the overwhelming emotion that threatened to overflow. "You have no idea of the priceless gift you've just given me, even if it doesn't feel like it right now in this painful moment. You've given me the raw, naked truth, and the truth, however brutal and heart-wrenching it may be, is always worth infinitely more than the most comfortable, reassuring lie." He paused, trying to organize the chaotic whirlwind of thoughts in his overwhelmed mind. "I need an additional favor from you, if you're willing and comfortable helping. Anything I can do to help." "Sir," she replied promptly, without apparent hesitation. "At the next monthly dinner, exactly 3 weeks from now, I need you to be here working, even if it's not originally your shift that night. I'm going to need a reliable witness who understands French perfectly, someone who can hear clearly what they say, and who can confirm everything later if necessary. Would you be willing to do that for me, even if it means changing your work schedule?" Lucy didn't hesitate for a single second. "I'll be here, Mr. Thompson. You can count on me completely." "Thanks, sir," she added, her voice laced with a fierce determination he hadn't expected. "If you need me to formally testify about what I've been hearing these past few months, to give an official deposition if necessary, I will do that too without thinking twice. What they are doing is deeply wrong and cruel on every possible level." William nodded gratefully, feeling a wave of relief mixed with the sharp pain of newly discovered betrayal. For the first time in years, since he had met Caroline at that charity gala, where she had completely charmed him with her apparent beauty and intelligence, he allowed himself to see clearly through the carefully constructed illusion. And what he saw was ugly, sordid, and calculating in a way that made him question his own judgment and his ability to read people properly. How had he, who had always prided himself on his sharp business intuition, been so completely blind in his personal life? How had he allowed his desperate desire for social acceptance and his deep loneliness to make him such an easy, willing prey? The following 3 weeks were the hardest of William's entire life, up to that crucial moment. He had to continue his normal routine as if nothing had fundamentally changed, as if his entire world hadn't been turned completely upside down by that devastating revelation. He had to keep being the attentive, loving fiancé. He had to smile when Caroline spoke excitedly about the final wedding preparations that he now knew with absolute certainty would never happen. He had to feign genuine interest when she showed him fabric swatches for the tablecloths or photos of elaborate floral arrangements that cost fortunes. when all he really wanted was to confront her immediately and see that perfect mask finally fall, revealing the true calculating person underneath. Every kiss she gave him felt poisoned now. Every sweet word sounded false to his attentive, suspicious ears. He watched her every gesture with new, critical eyes, looking for inconsistencies he had previously ignored, blinded by being too in love to see. The way she always changed the subject when he asked about specific details of her childhood or about old friends. The way she avoided introducing him to people from her past, always with convincing excuses about distance or losing touch. The occasional small slips in her elaborate stories about her family, details that didn't quite fit, but that he had always dismissed as normal memory lapses. Now everything made terrible, disturbing sense, like pieces of a macabre puzzle finally fitting together to reveal a picture he preferred not to have seen. But William was a brilliant strategist. It wasn't by chance he had built an empire from scratch, facing much more established and powerful competitors. He knew he needed concrete, irrefutable proof, not just Lucy's word, as much as he trusted her completely. He needed Caroline and her family to reveal themselves completely, to show their true intentions so clearly and unequivocally that there could be no denial or alternative explanation possible. During those 3 endless weeks, he discreetly consulted his trusted personal lawyer, an experienced man named Mr. Arthur Vance, who had been with him since the early days of his still small company. He explained the delicate situation in general terms, without revealing specific names initially, and asked for guidance on how to proceed legally to protect his assets if his devastating suspicions were definitively confirmed. Mr. Vance, a grey-haired man of 60, with shrewd eyes that had seen it all in decades of law practice, listened attentively without interrupting once, taking precise notes on his Italian leather pad. When William finished his painful narrative, the lawyer sighed heavily, a sound that carried decades of experience with the most sordid, calculating side of human nature. William, my young friend, unfortunately, cases like this are more common than you might imagine or would like to believe. People who see relationships only as financial transactions, who are capable of faking love for years if it means access to a considerable fortune. The lawyer paused, his fingers drumming thoughtfully on the mahogany desk. We need solid evidence, preferably audio or video recordings that clearly demonstrate the fraudulent intent. You mentioned you'll have a witness who speaks fluent French and can confirm the content of the conversations. That's excellent, but we need more. William nodded firmly, his jaw tight with steely determination. I want to install discreet recording equipment at the restaurant table before the next dinner. Is it possible to do that legally, respecting all privacy laws but still obtaining usable proof? Mr. Vance reflected carefully, his fingers steepled under his chin as he considered the complex legal implications. In the US, recording conversations is permissible under one-party consent in many states, including New York. You will be present at the table, so technically you are one of the consenting parties, even if you don't understand the language being spoken. I can legally argue that you had reasonable grounds to suspect fraudulent conduct and were protecting your legitimate interests. Furthermore, we will hire an independent certified translator to officially translate the recordings, giving them full legal validity in court if necessary. I also suggest you have at least one additional witness present, someone of absolute trust who can later confirm that the recording was not tampered with or manipulated in any way. And so, on the fateful night of the 3rd Thursday, William arrived at the bistro an hour before the dinner was scheduled. Lucy was already there waiting, wearing her impeccable uniform but with a tense expression that revealed her frayed nerves. With her was a discreet technician recommended by Mr. Vance, a small, quiet man who quickly installed tiny, practically invisible microphones under the table, masterfully hidden among the decorative carvings of the worked wood. The system would transmit everything to a secure recorder in a private room at the back of the restaurant, where Mr. Vance himself would be present during the entire dinner, monitoring and meticulously documenting everything. It's all set, Mr. Thompson, the technician informed in a low voice, packing away his specialized tools. The audio quality will be crystal clear. It will pick up even the quietest whispers. I've tested the system 3 times to ensure it's working perfectly. There's no possibility of technical failure. William thanked him with a nod, his throat suddenly too tight for words. He looked at Lucy, who had stood by his side during the entire process like a faithful, brave sentinel. "You don't have to do this," he said softly, giving her one last chance to back out if she wanted. "You've already done more than enough by warning me. I don't want you to risk your job or put yourself in an uncomfortable position because of me." "I have to do this, Mr. Thompson," she replied with unwavering conviction in her normally gentle voice. "Not just for you, but for myself too. I couldn't look myself in the mirror every morning, knowing I could have helped stop such a great and deliberate injustice, but chose to stay silent out of cowardice or convenience. Besides," she added with a small, sad smile, "they've been treating me with contempt for months, making derogatory comments about me in French whenever they see me in the restaurant, assuming I'm just another ignorant waitress who doesn't understand their superior language. This is personal for me now too." When Caroline arrived punctually at 8 o'clock, stunning as always in a red dress that had certainly cost a fortune and perfectly enhanced her enviable figure, she found William already seated calmly at the table, apparently relaxed and smiling. She had no idea of the carefully prepared trap awaiting her, had no suspicion of what was about to happen, and what would change everything irreversibly. "Hello, my love," she said sweetly, leaning in to kiss him with that rehearsed kiss he now recognized as completely false and calculated. "Are you okay? You seem a little tense. Did you have a rough day at the office?" "Just tired, darling," he lied easily, returning her smile with one he hoped looked genuine enough not to arouse suspicion. "Lots of back-to-back meetings and important decisions to make. But now I'm here with you, and soon your parents will arrive, so everything is perfect as always." Jean-Pierre and Catherine arrived a few minutes later, punctual as ever, bringing with them that characteristic aura of aristocratic superiority that William now clearly saw for what it really was. The empty arrogance of people living off the past glories of ancestors dead for centuries, who had probably never achieved anything significant on their own merit in their entire parasitic lives. The formal greetings were exchanged, the superficial comments about the weather and the New York traffic were made, and then came the elaborate orders. William noticed Lucy approaching to take them, and he felt a wave of deep gratitude for this courageous woman who was risking so much for a stranger. For a simple customer she barely knew beyond cordial lunches and brief conversations. She maintained her expression perfectly professional and neutral, revealing absolutely nothing of the storm that was about to break over that elegantly set table. As soon as she discreetly moved away with the orders, the familiar and now sinisterly transparent performance began. Jean-Pierre waited only until the appetizers arrived before turning to Caroline and starting to speak in French, his voice charged with that particular animation William now recognized as poorly disguised malice. But this time William was prepared. This time every word was being captured and recorded with perfect clarity. This time there was no way to deny or explain away what was being said, and William listened. Through the small discreet earpiece Mr. Vance had insisted he wear, connected to a real-time translator, every venomous word being instantly transcribed into English in a mechanized but perfectly understandable voice. He heard Jean-Pierre comment cynically on how pathetic William was in his desperate need for social approval, how easy it was to manipulate him with fake smiles and empty compliments about his company or his business achievements. He heard Catherine add with ill-disguised disdain that she couldn't wait to have access to his bank accounts after the wedding, that they could finally live in the luxurious style they truly deserved as descendants of French aristocracy, even if that aristocracy was completely fabricated. She specifically mentioned a penthouse she wanted to buy in Paris with his money, monthly first-class trips to Europe, jewelry and exclusive designer clothes she had always wanted but could never afford, with the limited resources they actually possessed. And then he heard Caroline, his beloved Caroline, whom he thought he knew so intimately after 2 years together, laugh loudly and say with sharp contempt and surprising cruelty that he was like a well-trained, obedient puppy, so grateful for any attention or affection she deigned to give him that he would do literally anything she asked without question, including signing complex legal documents and powers of attorney without reading them properly, because he trusted her blindly with an almost childlike naivety. Every word was a precise dagger in his heart, every shared laugh among the three conspirators, was like salt being rubbed into open, bleeding wounds. Every cruel comment confirmed everything Lucy had said and destroyed every happy memory he thought he had built with this woman over the past few years of his life. William felt something definitively break inside him, like a rope stretched too taut that finally snaps with an audible crack. It wasn't just his heart breaking, although that was certainly happening in a painful, irreversible way. It was also the last illusion falling away, the last hope dying, the last spark of doubt being completely extinguished. Now he knew with absolute, irrefutable certainty. There was no more room for questions or for giving the benefit of the doubt. They were exactly what Lucy had said they were. Sophisticated con artists, parasites in suits and designer dresses who saw him only as a walking bank, ready to be systematically looted. Throughout the entire endless dinner, William played his role of the infatuated, naive fiancé with a perfection that would surprise any professional actor. He smiled at the right moments, nodded in agreement when it seemed appropriate, and maintained that slightly lost expression they expected to see when they isolated him with their French conversations. But inside he was making cold, precise calculations, planning every next step with the same strategic meticulousness he used to crush competitors in the ruthless business world. When the dinner finally ended after 3 hours that seemed to last an agonizing eternity, William insisted on generously paying the bill as he always did, leaving an excessively large tip that made Lucy's eyes widen briefly before she reassumed her professional mask. As Caroline affectionately said goodbye to her co-conspiring parents in the restaurant's parking lot, exchanging kisses and a few more venomous words in French that the small earpiece hidden in his ear captured mercilessly, William sent a quick, discreet message to Mr. Vance on his phone. "We have everything we need. Proceed immediately as planned, down to the last detail." The reply came almost instantly, a simple "confirmed" that carried the weight of irreversible consequences. The next morning, a sunny Friday that promised to be beautiful, Caroline woke up in the luxury apartment she shared with William, completely oblivious to the devastating storm about to break over her perfectly coiffed head. She had her elaborate breakfast while casually flipping through an expensive design magazine, mentally planning how she would redecorate that apartment with his money as soon as they were officially married and she had full legal access to his finances. "William," she called sweetly from the bedroom, "can you come here a moment, please? I need you to look at some honeymoon options I've selected. I'm torn between Santorini and the Maldives. Both are paradise, but I can't decide on my own." William walked into the room calmly, wearing an impeccable suit as always, but carrying a leather briefcase she didn't immediately recognize. There was something different in his expression, something cold and distant in his eyes that usually looked at her with complete, unconditional adoration. "Caroline, we need to talk about something extremely important and urgent," he said, his voice devoid of any discernible emotion, completely neutral and professional. "Sit down, please. This will take some time and requires your full, undivided attention." She frowned slightly, a small crease of confusion appearing between her perfectly shaped eyebrows. But she obeyed docilely, sitting on the edge of the bed in the silk robe she wore to sleep, which cost more than most people's monthly salary. "What happened, love? You're scaring me with this serious, formal tone. Did something terrible happen at work? A problem with investors or shareholders?" "It's not about work," he replied calmly, methodically opening the briefcase and beginning to remove documents organized in precise order. "It's about us, or rather, about the elaborate farce that you and your lovely family have been perpetrating against me for the last 2 years of my life." He placed the first sheet on the bed between them. "This is the complete official transcription, done by a certified sworn translator, of the conversation you had with your parents last night at dinner, when you thought I didn't understand a single thing you were saying in French." Caroline's face turned white instantly, all the blood draining from her, rosy cheeks revealing a deathly pallor. Her eyes widened in genuine horror as she picked up the document with hands that began to tremble visibly. "William, I can explain completely," she began desperately, her voice jumping an octave. "You don't understand the full context of these conversations. You're interpreting everything completely wrong and out of context." "I understand perfectly," he interrupted her coldly, his voice cutting like tempered steel. "I have understood every venomous word, every cruel comment, every sordid plan for months, thanks to Lucy. the waitress you treat with such contempt and who speaks fluent French due to her French mother. She told me everything weeks ago. Last night was simply to obtain irrefutable, legally valid proof. He placed more documents on the bed systematically. Here are the audio recordings of all the dinners from the last 3 months, obtained legally since I was present as a party to the conversations. Here is the formal, signed and notarized deposition from Lucy about everything she heard you saying about me during our entire fabricated relationship. And here, he added with a bitter satisfaction he didn't try to hide, is the detailed analysis done by my forensic accountants on the true finances of your supposedly aristocratic family. Caroline tried to grab the papers, but her hands were shaking so much they almost fell to the marble floor. William continued relentlessly, his voice maintaining that professional, distant tone he used in tough negotiations. You are not descendants of French aristocracy, as you've always so proudly claimed. Your parents are descendants of common immigrants who came to the US in the 60s, fleeing considerable debts in France. This whole story of ancestral vineyards and properties in Avignon is completely fabricated. Pure, elaborate fantasy. Your father worked as a mediocre insurance salesman for years, before retiring early, due to a questionable scheme my investigators are still looking into. Your mother has never worked a single day in her adult life. You live off carefully maintained appearances and mounting credit card debt on which you can barely pay the monthly interest. That's not true, Caroline protested weakly, tears beginning to stream down her face, now bare of any makeup to hide its imperfections. Her eyes, once so beautiful and expressive, looked small and red as her mascara smudged. You're believing strangers and expensive investigators instead of the woman who loves you and is going to marry you in a few weeks. I loved an illusion, William corrected harshly. Each word as heavy as lead. I loved a person who never really existed, an elaborate character you played masterfully for 2 whole years. Congratulations on the exceptional performance, Caroline. You should seriously consider a career in dramatic theater. You have a genuine talent for faking emotions you don't feel. But that elaborate farce is definitively over now. He placed the last set of papers on the bed. These are the official cancellation documents for our wedding. The vendors have all been notified and financially compensated for the inconvenience. The very expensive engagement ring, which cost more than many people earn in years, I would like back immediately. And you have exactly 48 hours to completely remove your belongings from this apartment before the locks are changed and the security system is reprogrammed. Caroline stared at him with a devastating mixture of shock, rising anger, and absolute despair. She was clearly searching for words, for arguments that could reverse this catastrophic situation, but for the first time in her manipulative life, she seemed completely out of resources or strategies. Are you really going to throw away everything we built together because of some private conversations that were misinterpreted? She tried one last time, her voice choked but with a hint of anger appearing. Because of some jealous waitress who clearly wants to take my place in your life. William laughed, but it was a sound completely devoid of humor or joy, a bitter, cutting sound. We didn't build anything together, Caroline. You built an elaborate trap, and I was foolish enough to fall for it head first because I was blinded by loneliness and a desperate desire for social acceptance. As for Lucy, she has shown more genuine character and moral courage in a single act of honesty than you have in 2 entire years of meticulously constructed lies. Now please start packing. My lawyers will be in contact with you and your parents regarding the potential legal consequences of attempted fraud should you decide to contest anything or try to extort me in any way in the future. 3 months passed since that devastating but liberating day. William was surprised to find that the sharp pain of betrayal gradually subsided faster than he had anticipated. Perhaps because deep down in his heart, he had always known something was deeply wrong, had always felt that uncomfortable dissonance between what Caroline said and what her cold, calculating eyes truly expressed when she thought no one was watching. Or perhaps it was simply because the truth, however painful at first, is always easier to process and overcome than living immersed in comforting lies that will eventually be revealed as even more destructive. He spent time focused intensely on his work, diving into ambitious new projects and expanding his company into international markets he had always wanted to explore but had never found the time for. His nights were filled not with empty social events and torturous dinners, but with books he had always wanted to read, classic films he had never seen, and even French classes that, ironically, he was now taking of his own free will, not out of social obligation or a need for acceptance. And every day, without exception, he had lunch at the small bistro in the West Village. But now the relationship between him and Lucy had subtly changed, irreversibly. She was still professional and attentive, but there was a new connection there, a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and honesty that he had never had with Caroline. They talked about books and movies, about dreams and future ambitions, about life in general. And gradually, William realized he eagerly looked forward to those lunches not for the excellent food, but for her company, for the way her eyes lit up when she spoke passionately about some new dish she was learning to prepare at school, for the way she genuinely laughed at his jokes without measuring if they were sophisticated enough. They were simple, authentic moments, completely devoid of artifice or psychological games. And for the first time in years, William felt truly happy, truly at peace with himself and his life choices. End of story. Dear listeners, we sincerely hope that William's story and Lucy's impressive courage have deeply touched your hearts and perhaps even made you reflect on the importance of truth and authenticity in our lives. If you were moved by this engaging narrative about discovered betrayal, about unexpected courage from simple people, and about the redemption that comes when we finally open our eyes to see reality, then please don't forget to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Your support is essential, so we can continue bringing unique and captivating stories like this every day. Leave a like on this video if the story impacted you in some way, and most importantly, come to the comments to share your reflections and experiences with us. Have you ever been through a situation where you discovered that people close to you were not who they appeared to be? How did you deal with that painful revelation? Your comments not only help the channel grow and reach more people, but also create a community where we can all learn from each other's experiences. Every day we bring new stories that deeply explore the fascinating complexity of life, of true love versus false love, of betrayal and forgiveness, of the courage to do what is right even when it's hard. Don't miss our next exciting content. Hit the notification bell to be alerted whenever a new story is published. And if you particularly liked this narrative about William and Lucy, we have a special playlist with equally engaging stories about second chances, about life-changing discoveries, and about ordinary people who do extraordinarily brave things. Find that playlist here on the channel and dive into more narratives that will make you reflect, feel, and perhaps see the world from a slightly different perspective. Thank you so much for joining us on this emotional journey today. Your presence here makes all the difference. Until the next story, and always remember, the truth may hurt initially, but it is always better than living a comfortable lie that will eventually crumble in an even more destructive way. Take care and see you soon.